Okay, welcome to the Whitman Finance Committee meeting. Today is Tuesday, February 9th, 2021. It's 7 o'clock. We are broadcasting from the virtual Zoom platform. I'll take a minute to review the agenda that was emailed in advance of the meeting. We do have meeting minutes that were sent pretty late. I would probably assume that the board will vote to table the meeting minutes till they can be reviewed from January 19th and January 26th, 2021. Reserve fund stands at $37,321.20. The public forum will be temporarily suspended as the COVID-19 limitations only allow. If anybody would like to bring attention to any matter to the Finance Committee, you're invited to send me an email at randerson@whitman/ma.gov. So under new business, the only item there is a budget and revenue review. Under old business, we have our place setters for subcommittee reports from the Building Facilities Capital Expenditure Committee, the Regional Agreement Amendment Committee, and the Middle School Building Committee. Also under old business, we have the Whitman-Hanson Regional School District Assessment, non-mandated busing, and the audit. Additionally, under old business carried over is the CARES Act, ATM special town meeting warrants, and the Board of Selectmen joint meeting agenda. So, and then under other business, I did meet today with the new town administrator, Lincoln Heineman, and I had the pleasure of sitting with him to talk about a few things about upcoming collaboration with the Board of Selectmen and him. So I will review that discussion that we had this afternoon. Under accountant updates, we have an email that I forwarded from Ken from today that we can also take a look at. So upcoming meetings we have right now, I posted today for February 16th, and the joint meeting with the Board of Selectmen is scheduled for February 23rd. But again, we'll probably be talking about that a little bit when we talk about the meeting schedule. And so that's it for the agenda. What is the will of the committee with respect to the previous meeting minutes? Does anybody feel that they had enough time to review them, or would you like to put them off till the next meeting?
I move to
I
table.
would like to, I second.
All right. Welcome, Ralph. You're right on time. Well, we just reviewed the agenda, and we have a motion on the floor to table the meeting minutes. Did you get them by email, Ralph? You're muted. You're muted, Ralph. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So they're really, because they came so late and I forwarded them so late, I didn't get back home till after 5. So we have a motion to table. I guess we'll take a roll call on that. Kathleen?
Yes.
John New?
Yes.
John Galvin?
Yes.
Dave?
Yes.
Al?
Yes.
Ralph?
Yes.
And I vote yes. So we will table the meeting minutes. We'll have an opportunity to take a look at them. So the budget and the budget. So last week in our discussion about where to proceed with the budget that was a significant deficit, the discussion ended with the charge for our town accountant to print a level funded budget that we could use to infill what is left over from a balanced budget. So does everybody have a copy of the Article 2 that was dated February 3rd that was submitted from the town accountant?
Somewhere.
Does anybody not have it? Okay. So, John, since this was your recommendation, would you like to start a little bit on the general idea of what our goals are with respect to a level funded budget to,
Well, so I'd really call it a baseline budget instead of a
Mhm.
level funded budget. Because it's not really level funded. It's basically taking, what we would be required to spend, without our control, things that are contracts, things that are step increases, things that are, you know, insurances and things like that. So that things that, we really can't say we're not going to fund it because we have to fund it. It's not a choice. So I'd call it more a baseline budget. And so that basically it's giving us an idea of where we can start from, and then we would have a better decision of what was available, would know better what's available, and then could make decisions on where we would recommend that money to go. I just think it's easier than trying to figure out, what we need to cut to get down to. It gives us a basement of, of where we are. So we know how much money we have to spend versus trying to figure out how much money we need to cut.
okay, so with that, I guess the next thing probably is to update the board from Ken's email from today. So I did forward that. He sent the email this afternoon at 4:07. I forwarded it at 5:45. So it says, hi, Rick, some items regarding the budget that came up this week. Parentheses, all changes have been made on my file for next week's Article 2 update. And parentheses, I received a copy of the contract for our new town administrator, and it lists his salary at $142,800 for fiscal '22, which is $2,200 less than what was in the file previously. I also received a new contract for the health inspector that's replacing Alexis, and his fiscal '21 salary is $63,000, which is $5,125 less than what was in the file previously. Bruce sent us a letter indicating that the deficit spending will happen in the snow and ice budget. He's $16,830.08 over now, so I'm plugging in an estimate of $50,000 in that deficit line in the event more snowstorms happen. Minor item, in the new budget, John requested, I inadvertently left line 166 the same when the 2% should have come out. That's only a $78 change. So the original deficit on the revised file stands at $658,367, and the build from the bottom up method has an excess of $362,355. So John, would it be possible to put up the February 3rd copy of the Article 2?
I honestly don't know what good that would do because the numbers have changed so much since then.
Right, well, I think that
you know.
respectfully, what I want to do that is so that those changes are done within the confines of
All
our
right.
meeting.
Well, then I've made several updates to my file, so I'm actually believe I'm close to what Ken is. So my file wouldn't represent what you're looking for. So you may want to ask somebody else to share it then. Because my file, I've made the updates as they've come along, so to keep
All
my
right,
file
well-
up to date. So
Would the board be comfortable looking at the updates and then reviewing them, the ones that were put in there?
I'd have no problem with that.
Okay. All right, so John, then if you share your updated file, maybe you could just run down the numbers that changed in the copy that we had. Is that possible? If we go from.
I could try, I guess. I'm not sure exactly all of them, but I'll do my best. Hold on.
Yeah, so we'll just run down the lines. I mean, this is just an exercise. So
Right.
I think a bigger picture too, just for planning for the budget. The conversation I had, and again, I'll go over the entire conversation at the time in the meeting where I review the town administrator's report. But the conversation that I had with Lincoln this afternoon was that, it's his vision that we have a collaborative effort and produce one budget for a town meeting. So there has been some discussion that, there's, a separate Article 2 that perhaps the selectmen are working on or from. So I think the bottom line is that the town administrator is committed, which I think is great, that we work collaboratively with the Board of Selectmen after we get the budget presented in a joint meeting. So it's his suggestion that we hold off the joint meeting with the Board of Selectmen until we come up with a balanced budget and bring that to the joint meeting. Rosemary.
Just to clarify, I don't believe, I'm almost certain that the law requires only one Article 2, that they could not do that. But I think presenting us with their ideas and coming together is really what's supposed to be happening. So I do hope that they have a plan to come to our meeting with their suggestions and we could talk that out, because I would hate for them to do something so unorthodox.
Yeah,
So
I agree. So again, they're meeting tonight. That's why Lincoln is unavailable for our meeting. And that is also why we need to have a discussion later in our meeting about either revising the conflicting schedule with the Board of Selectmen or changing the night in which the Finance Committee meets moving forward, so that we can have that constant communication. I think that's really, I think, what's lacking most in the budget process here. So, and like I said, Lincoln made every indication that it's his goal to work directly with the Finance Committee to get a balanced budget that we can present to the Board of Selectmen at a joint meeting. So it looks unlikely that obviously won't happen by next week. So we'll be changing the date of the joint meeting as well. So, all right, so that's kind of big picture stuff. Is the board ready to move forward with the plan that we have in front of us to look at the baseline budget and the numbers that Ken mentions in his email and that need to be updated so that everybody has the same copy at the end of the meeting? It's my hope, and correct me if I'm wrong, that we leave the meeting with the same copy and we come back to the next meeting and pick up where we left off. Like I said, it is my hope that we try to conduct all of the business of the Finance Committee with respect to the budget and anything else that affects the financial matters of the town within the confines of our posted meetings. So that's my hope. Dave, you're muted.
Has anyone gone to the department heads and asked them to revise their budget based on the Madden recommendations?
That was suggested last week. Actually, I suggested that what Ken should do as the accountant and then is preparing the Article 2 and combining all of the information for us to consider. But the discussion last week, again, the board agreed that working from the baseline budget was the best opportunity to get to a balanced budget. Because, John, if we recall from last week's discussion, the 2.5% wouldn't get us to a balanced budget.
Yeah, I think the discussion that we had, Dave, was that right now we don't really know what guidance to give the department heads. What do we tell them? You know, if we tell them Madden's recommendations, we're going to come in still for almost $400,000 in the deficit. So by building this baseline budget that we're talking about, we then have an opportunity of evaluating each department individually and decide, you know, we may find out that certain departments we need to recommend don't get any increase this year. Other departments, like for instance, technology, is going to have a 7% increase this year because that's something we can't control. It's a software, hardware contract, software licenses, things like that. So now that we have this baseline budget built, we have almost $400,000 available now. We can look and decide as a committee where we want to spend that money. You know,
John,
I mean,
John, there's a flaw to the baseline budget concept. And
Okay.
that is some of the elements that you include in your baseline, saying that they're absolutes within the town are also present within the school, and they're not included. That means you're sort of, making it a hard solid within our town budget, but aren't being considered within that school budget. So how do we plan to remedy that? Like OPEC
Well,
is part of schools.
I think once we have a budget from the schools, we'll then put that into, obviously we can't really do anything with this budget now until we have the information from the schools. I mean, that's a huge piece of it. So until we know, and I think we'll know in 2 weeks, I believe, February 24th, I believe they'll be releasing the numbers. So at that point, we'll be able to, plug that in as well and see where that fits, and, obviously with what we've got left over, that they're still zeroed out. So that's the first thing we need to look at when we
Yeah.
get those numbers.
Also, it's important to see how departments are growing over the last 5 years. So, to say at what rate they're growing at, just like the finance committee handbook. Do we have a department that's growing at a larger percentage than other departments? Are they coming in? We need to look at that growth. We haven't seen anything like that. That is something that's supposed to be happening every year, that we're looking at that trend. I'd like to see that included in this decision too. That
Well,
way,
I think what Rick said is that when we leave this meeting, or, right after the meeting, that everybody gets a copy of this. And what I have is $300 off from the numbers that Ken has. So somewhere along the lines, I've got $300 missing. But everybody look at it and see what it looks like, and study it and see where the deficiencies are. I mean, obviously we only have so much money we have to spend. And that leads me to the next point, is I think our next exercise is to ask the new town administrator and the accountant to go back to the revenue estimates and revisit those revenue estimates, because we're working off of revenue estimates that Ken created maybe 3 months ago now. And Lincoln, who's a financial expert, municipal financial expert, have the opportunity to go over them with Ken and come back to us with an updated revenue estimates, so that we have both. Now we have our baseline budget and we have an up-to-date revenue estimates before we do anything. And then obviously we got to wait for the schools. So.
And then just one other thing too, to keep in mind is we had the opportunity to meet with each department. So while we're reviewing this, Article 2, I think it's a good idea to go back and look at, if you took notes about each meeting with each department and the challenges that they presented. And like I said, we need to come up with recommendations line by line. One of the things that I'm a little uncomfortable with too is for the finance committee to be changing the lines within the budget. That really should be the budget manager. We should be coming up with a dollar figure or a percentage figure that then the budget manager can go back, rework his numbers, and resubmit a budget to Ken that is based on what percentage we now feel that the town could support or afford.
Correct.
Dave.
Just going back to my question, I didn't hear a yes or no in your answer. Was there a yes or a no?
There is definitely a no.
Okay, so I don't know if for those committee members who have been on this committee for the past 3 years, I just want to have you recall what has happened in the past when we've tried this scenario. As early as last year, we didn't necessarily try this scenario, but we came to town meeting with the budget, and our Article 2 got superseded by the Board of Selectmen's Article 2, essentially making our 37 meetings almost not worthwhile. And then the year prior, or maybe 2 years prior, we tried the same exact exercise, and what happened again? We went through this whole process, this whole exercise, and again, the Board of Selectmen came up with their Article 2, and our Article 2 was superseded again. I'm just afraid that we're going to go down this road and waste everybody's time on this committee and have a lot of discussion for naught.
So Dave, what is your recommendation?
Well, I've been saying it for every meeting I've been on since since we started this budget season. Go back to the department heads, tell them that we're over budget, and tell them to make their budget recommendations to be within the Madden report that the Board of Selectmen unanimously approved.
So.
Can
Dave,
I
we had
answer
this
that?
conversation
Can I answer that,
before.
Rick?
Go
Rick?
ahead. Go ahead, Joe.
Dave, if we do that, we're gonna be in a $400,000 deficit. I showed you a budget 2 meetings ago that had everything leveled off to Madden's recommendations, and it still had a $385,000 deficit. So by telling the budget managers to come back to Madden's recommendations, we're wasting their time because that's not gonna be enough for us to balance the budget. So in order for us to give them better direction, we need to come up with what we can offer them to be a percentage increase, if at all. We may not be able to. There's going to be several departments that get the exact same amount of money as this year as they did last year. And
So
we
let me
have to
go-
decide that as a department. We have, right now, Ken says we have 300 and, let me find the email that he just said. 300, we have a $362,000 to spend on basically this basement budget. That's what we have left over. The school hasn't gotten anything yet. The school's going to take all of that most likely. So right now, everybody's pretty much balanced out to zero, and we've got a balanced budget. So if they come in at 2.5%, we're in a deficit again. So I don't see what going back to them. I agree with Rick. What we got to do is figure out how much we can tell each department what they have, and then let them figure out how to do it. But
Well,
Madden's not going to do it.
That seems pretty easy. We find all the fixed costs. Those are budget increases that we have no control over, and then zero everybody else out. Done.
That's what this is. That's exactly what we just did from the last meeting. That's what Ken supplied to us, and that's what we're talking about. That's what we asked.
So we level fund everyone from the same number that they had last year, with the exception of fixed costs. That's all we should do.
Well, it's not, it doesn't have to be that simple. I mean, there can be additional monies that we can spend. I mean, we want to spend as much money as we possibly have in the levy. We want to spend it all. We don't want to have any excess levy capacity. So we basically need to figure out how much money that is and then spend it all to the best of our ability.
Okay, Kathleen, did you want to chime in on that conversation?
I share Dave's concern in that we have the Madden report as a guideline. I know that, but with John's calculations that he's presented to us in the past, we're over by X number of dollars. But we have to have a guiding principle, and going baseline budget make some assumptions that some costs are fixed and other costs are not fixed. And we haven't heard from the schools. We're not going to hear from them for another 2 weeks. And although I haven't received any direct information from the schools, I keep a tab on what's going on at the state level, and the minimum local contributions have changed significantly. So where do we put that? Is that a fixed cost over which we have no control, and therefore the increase in the school budget is protected? Or is it, sorry, we don't care about the minimum local contribution changes? I like staying with the Madden report and working on a budget that puts us over, wait for the schools to come in, that gives us at least that dollar line that the schools is requesting, and move from there. We're aware that we're over at this point by $600 and some odd thousand. But I don't know who's made the decision that these costs are fixed and these are not. And the school, being the biggest single budget, is going to have a major change, or will have a major change on what we call fixed costs. And I might call something fixed and you might call it not fixed, but in the back of my mind, I'm adhering to at least the spirit of the Madden report. If it puts us over, it puts us over. People need to know that.
Thank you, Kathleen. So let me just review what we have on for our next steps, so to speak, I guess. So one, John's recommendation, and for those who weren't in attendance last week, the recommendation was to have Ken prepare this baseline budget. So I think what the direction, if we're looking at working forward with the baseline budget, is to update the information that is part of Ken's email and the information that John has on his updated Article 2, so that everybody leaves this meeting with the same Article 2. And then we review the meetings that we've had with the departments and come up with a percentage that we can then resubmit to each budget manager for them to make the line item changes and resubmit their budget. So that's one scenario. I hear Kathleen is saying that we wait until we get the information from the schools before we even move forward with any changes to the Article 2 that we were working on previously. Is that what you said, Kathleen?
It is. And to
Okay.
be honest, Rick, I don't have a copy. I have too many copies of Article 2, and I'm looking through all of them. I don't have anything that shows that we have an excess of 362,000. So if
Okay,
Ken.
so that's in the baseline budget that was forwarded from Ken on,
Why don't we just have Ken send us what he has so that everything's up to date? Ken sent us, Ken says he has a new file that has those informations and he's made changes to based on information that he's received. And why don't we have him send it so that we're all on the same page? I mean, I'm sure unless he's coming tonight, that'll be in the morning, but at least we'll all have him in the morning.
so he does make reference in his email to the first sentence says, some items regarding the budget that came up this week, and then all changes have been made on my file for next week's Article 2 update. So it sounds as though he will be coming to our meeting next week. And we'll also have the new town administrator that will be coming to our meeting next week. So I think that it's a good idea that we just, the will of the committee is where we'll move forward. But if we wait till we get the updated budget, if we're going to use the baseline, why go through the exercise at this meeting to update the one that Ken and John already have? And then that's the one that the committee members can use to formulate questions for discussion next week. Does that sound like a direction to go in?
Sounds better.
Okay.
That sounds better. And also I'd be interested to see how his Article 2 compares against what the selectmen have. Is it going to be the same? Is it going to be different?
Well, I'm not really sure whether the selectmen have an Article 2. Like I said, I think our goal, and to Dave's point, we should be going to town meeting with a single Article 2 with the recommendations from both boards.
Everybody keeps saying Article 2. Article 2 is exclusive to Finance Committee. There is no such thing as an Article 2 outside. It is completely owned and exclusive to a Finance Committee. There is no such thing as an Article 2 outside. They can make recommendations against the Finance Committee's recommendations, but there is no, they can bring us their recommendations, but there
Right.
is no such thing as an Article 2 outside of a Finance Committee.
What
But
did,
I
what
would
did
just
Hanson,
suggest,
what did
Rosemary,
Hanson
that
do
we-
it? What did Hanson do at their town meeting last year? They
If
used-
they
they
did
used
something
the-
different, then they did something that is completely unorthodox. It is an exclusive
saying,
document
they-
of the Finance Committee. And I think somebody should probably look into that on the state level because that's completely,
So-
that's not appropriate.
I agree that we should definitely have one document. So whether the selectmen are bringing recommendations using a Article 2 as a guide, I mean, it's a worksheet. I think it's important to keep that in mind. It's not a separate budget. If the selectmen are making suggestions on how to move forward with the budget, they will be based on the Article 2. But I would highly doubt that we're going to get a submission from the Board of Selectmen as an alternative selectmen's budget to be presented at town meeting. So, anybody else regarding the process? John Noon, then Kathleen.
I guess I'm going to ask for a little bit of the historical background here, because what I'm hearing is, okay, there hasn't been two Article 2s printed on a warrant. But in effect, there has been two Article 2s when it comes to the town meeting, because the Finance Committee goes in one direction, the Board of Selectmen has gone in a separate direction. And it doesn't seem like there's any interest on the selectmen's part to have a meeting of the minds. There's no discussion taking place. In fact, there's more effort made to keep putting off meeting with us. And quite honestly, I look at the budget and there are some positions taken by some of the heads of departments where there's either increases in salary, increases in positions, some new positions, whatever it might happen to be. I, for one, would prefer to say to these people, all of the town heads, we don't have the money to go this route. And we as a committee aren't sure that we can support a new position or an additional salary or whatever it might happen to be. There's certain questions that we had back in November. And I guess I'd ask when somebody's communicating with Ken, and I'll throw out an example. Has Ken talked to the recreation department about what they understand their budget responsibilities to be and how they could be using money that wasn't spent in 2020 or 2021 budget as we move forward towards the 2022 budget? We still don't have an answer to that, whether, and again, it's a small amount of money, but it's the kind of thing where we've got to start the department heads at least thinking that we may not support the money that they're looking for. And we can flatten budgets, or we can say the Madden report. Well, the honest truth is Madden report was a simple statement that you are spending more than you have coming in. And it doesn't look like you're gonna find oil in the middle of the town, town hall that's suddenly gonna cover the shortfalls that you're creating in the operational side of things. And we haven't even started to look at the possibility that there are gonna be capital expenditures that haven't been brought forward. So if the committee wishes to put off, so be it. But I'm just concerned that I'm hearing the history. It's not an unusual history. Granted, there's probably 30 years or so that I'm not aware of. But back when I was on the Finance Committee, way back when, it was somewhat of an adversarial situation between the Finance Committee and the selectmen, because the selectmen had their own agenda as far as town spending. And it may not be true now, but it sure smells like it at the moment.
Sure. John, you make some good points, and just to go back a little bit on the challenges, I think, for this particular year is we had the town administrator retire, and we hired a new town administrator. So there's going to be some lag, but historically, the town administrator had a very active role in meeting with budget managers and staff meeting, basically. And I sat in on more than one, invited as the Finance Committee chair to hear that the budgets that they had submitted previously did not fall into the the guidelines that were established when the budget mailing was sent out. So as Dave said, resubmit your budgets based on the recommendations that were outlined in the budget mailing. So obviously not everybody did that. And it's very evident when we have a $700,000 deficit that they either didn't pay attention or they have their own, budget that they hope to get. So I think somewhere there will be a discussion. And again, I think we're moving in that direction to come up with a number or a percentage and go back to the department heads and say, here's what you got, plug it into your numbers on the line items and resubmit your budget. Rosemary.
Just to clarify, we're a committee that is exclusively meant to look at the financial stability of this community. We are not political. We are not policymakers. We are to look at how we're looking 5 years forward, 5 years back, and we're watching to create stability in our community. So this idea that there could be a separate recommending committee for financial stability, while being political, it doesn't make sense. You can't. That's why we don't negotiate with different departments or why we do everything very publicly, so that we can assure that independence and financial, view. That's why it's really important to stick to those Madden recommendations if we aren't taking in revenue to handle next year or the year after. So just keep that in mind. That's our charge. That's why there's only one Article 2.
Thank you, Rosemary, and John Noon. Thank you, Kathleen.
Okay, so the point that I want to make is I'm on this committee, or I sought to be appointed to this committee after 2019's town meeting, when preceding the town meeting, there were secret meetings held, not finance committee meetings, open to the public, where we could listen to how these decisions were made. So there were meetings with department heads behind closed doors, and all of a sudden, there were cuts to certain budgets, but there weren't any cuts to the personnel except for the schools. I'm still furious about the 19.2 positions that were cut from the schools without anyone having any open discussion about it. So I'm with Dave on this one. We have a purpose. We have guidelines from Madden. If we can't come up with a balanced budget, well, fine. Let's tell everybody we can't come up with a balanced budget, but I don't want any secret meetings. The meetings have to be public. People can't come in and talk to us anymore, but they have to be public so that they know the hard decisions that this committee will have to make once the final numbers are in. And again, the school budget is going to be the big one. It's a number that it's pie in the sky right now. We don't know what the number is going to be. There's no indication of what the superintendent is working with, but just to remind everyone, the schools have taken a hit this year in terms of what the kids are learning. So my concern is that one man's unmutable, this is protected because there's we don't have control over these costs, like the technology increases, which I understand. Josh has done a great job negotiating them with the companies. So it's an uncontrolled cost. Well, the schools have uncontrolled costs too. Are we going to take that into account, or are we going to say, well, we're sorry, but that exceeds the amount available to the town? So at the end of the day, what I want is all discussions to take place at public meetings of the finance committee, no closed door meetings where secret deals are made, and then we come to town meeting confused as to why no one's discussing the big picture, which is the town needs an override. That's the Madden recommendation, and that's the intimation from the Madden report that fiscal 22, and I think that's where we are. It states, and Dave shared that with us a couple of weeks ago, that he could see on the writing on the wall that this town cannot continue to support the type of services that the townspeople expect within the levy limit. And that's all I have to say about that.
Thank you, Kathleen. Yep, at the end of the day, it is about sustainability. And that's again, our long-term goal. Part of our long-term goal is to come up with that strategic plan and get a budget that is sustainable, not wrangling every year to try and cobble together, a budget that's woefully deficient as far as what the requests are and what the resources are. So it is a challenge. And I can commit to you, Kathleen, that any discussions that I have, I bring to the meeting or I forward emails directly to all the committee members as I get them. So I guess that's the best we can hope for, is that everybody is working collaboratively to share information throughout this entire budget process. And I'm encouraged immensely by Lincoln Heinemann's approach to collaborating with both the Board of Selectmen and the Finance Committee. I think we're going to be going in a really good direction. So is the board comfortable with the recommendation that was outlined for Ken to forward the updated Article 2 that includes the information that he sent in his email, and for the board then to look back and formulate questions while we wait for the biggest department, the Whitman Hanson Regional School District, to submit a budget so that we can move forward with the rest of the Article 2. I don't think we can really work on the Article 2 without that number. Is that an
I
agreement?
agree. I agree
Correct.
with that.
Okay.
would-
Anybody else?
I would also ask that Ken and Lincoln review the revenue estimates as well.
Revenue
That's
estimate.
a good, yes.
Okay,
Great.
so if you don't see an email from me to Ken and Lincoln tomorrow requesting an updated Article 2 and a review of the revenue estimates, then please send me an email and remind me that needs to be done. But it should happen sometime tomorrow. Okay, anything else under the budget agenda item?
I want to know what our plans are going forward when we're looking at market trends and other things. We have a rough couple of years coming up. And if we're not really careful now, you know, when we do have a little bit of revenue, we might end up next year, you know, we're not feeling the impact right now of COVID. In the next 3 to 4 years, we will. All the trends that I'm seeing from the banks are a mid to long-term recovery from this, particularly for the area. I think we really have to be careful that we want to be generous, but we also, you know, give increases to jobs, but we might not be able to be job creators because we have to look to be job maintainers for the next 3 to 4 years. So I think we have to have that in the back of our minds where we're moving forward and when we're spending right now.
And I think that's a great point, Rosemary, and that should be something that we bring to the joint meeting with the Board of Selectmen to make sure that everybody is thinking that far in advance with the budget projections. Anybody else? Okay, thank you all for great input on the budget. Under old business, Building Facilities Capital Expenditure Committee, Dave, anything to update the board with?
The DPW's vendor, consultant, Environmental Partners, has accepted our invitation to attend our February 18th meeting, excuse me, to discuss the forced main sewer line project that they're requesting capital article for this coming town meeting. Currently, there's a draft version of the assessment report on the town's website. They recently gave us a final version. Josh said he was gonna upload that. He had some concerns about some potential confidential information. So once that's done, it should be up. He said it might be up done this week, so it might be up there now. We're using that document to formulate our questions for Environmental Partners. Whitman Hanson Regional School District, they're currently prioritizing their their current requests so we can get an idea of what their priority is for capital projects requests for the schools. And an article from last year, if you recall, the Duval and Conley School generators. The school last year, the school committee originally came to the Capitals Committee with one article requesting one generator to be on a mobile unit and go back and forth to the two schools. After deliberation, we recommended that they look at maybe a pad mounted generator for each school. And they did that, and that was the funding for that was approved at town meeting. But let me go back for a second. But he also indicated that there'd be likely additional funds necessary to finalize that this upcoming fiscal year. He estimates that number. I didn't write it down to be short money. I think it's a few. I don't want to say a number because I forget the number off the top of my head. But it's short money to finalize that, to get a originally it was diesel powered. They're thinking maybe using a natural gas powered one for Conley and a diesel one for Duval, because the gas line in the street doesn't reach to the area that they need to go to. So they think that it may be too cost prohibitive. And that's it.
Okay, thanks.
When you
Dave.
say
Any
short
questions?
money, can you give a range of short money?
I don't even
Under
want to guess.
10,000?
I don't even want to guess because I forget the number off the top of my head.
We could get that next week if you have a question. Kathleen, did you have a question?
It's a procedural question, Dave. When the schools present a request for a capital article, does that article automatically get placed on the warrant, or is there some discussion?
No, any department can submit an article. Not all articles make it to the warrant. That's up to the Board of Selectmen. I'm assuming that the Board of Selectmen are going to take our recommendations on what articles are placed onto the warrant. But essentially that's up to the Board of Selectmen.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, and one other thing, the communication from South Shore VOTEC regarding their debt authorization for a warrant article town meeting. I did forward that. Did you get that, Dave?
Yeah.
So that'd be something that your committee will be working on for recommendations for upcoming town meeting.
No, the South Shore VOTEC capital expenditures are folded into their operating budget. So, and the facilities that they have are not Whitman facilities. So I don't believe it's within our authority to
Okay.
to do that.
Okay, so that communication from South Shore VOTEC is basically the wording for the warrant article that will be placed on the warrant for upcoming town meeting.
I'd assume we would review that when we review all the other warrants that are on when we review all the warrants.
Right,
Correct.
well, we need a
Articles.
recommendation.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
We'll need to vote a recommendation, for sure, yeah. Okay, anything, Regional Agreement Amendment Committee, nothing to report. Middle School Building Committee, anything to report?
Yeah, so we were scheduled to have a meeting this past Monday. It was abruptly canceled at the end of the week. We were sent some communications. The only real relevant information is that the MSBA has set the size of the school that it will authorize to build for us. If we decide to build a school for 6th through 8th grade, it will build it to contain 515 students. If we decide to build a building that's 5 through 8, it would be 675 students. The district seems to be in favor of building a school for grades 5 through 8 so that it corresponds to what Hanson is doing. But Dave, correct me if I'm wrong, our committee has never discussed this whatsoever. So You know, obviously a building that's built for 5 through 8 is going to cost the town more than a building that would be built for 6 through 8, because it'll be a smaller building, 6 through 8. So, you know, we've only met once as a committee. So, you know, I'm a little bit disappointed that they canceled this meeting. I'm not quite sure why they did, but what can I say? You know, all I got was the email.
Okay, Kathleen.
John, who's the driving force on that committee?
The chairman is Fred Small.
And there was no explanation why this meeting was canceled?
Hold on, I'll read you the email. Oh. The meeting on Monday, February 8th is canceled. This was sent to us on February 4th. Please check your email for recent communication and documentation. And that's basically what I just outlined you. So they sent the email with a couple documents basically outlining how they came up with the numbers, and then a certification from the MSBA on what the number would be. And that's what they sent us. And then the meeting got canceled. So
My head hurts at the thought of this incredibly important project being dragged out and losing its prominence because of failure to meet, to consult, to discuss what's going on. I have a grandson who graduated from the middle school, and I have 3 more grandchildren heading that way. And reading Ernie Sandlin's report last year, it's a horror show in that building. Upside down, inside out windows, heating system that doesn't work, rodent droppings on teacher and student desks. If the parents of middle school students each got a copy of that report, they would be calling their school committee members saying, when are you going to meet? This is not a, let's see if we can get this building built. We were fast tracked to the front of the MSBA, and then we're dilly-dallying with pushing this project through. So I don't know who wants to take the bull by the horns and push this, but this should be a front page article every day, every week in the Whitman Hanson Express. There has to be some progress on this project. It's not something that this town can say, I hope it works out, because these kids deserve a safe environment with up-to-date technology and a heat system and a ventilation system that protects their safety. Given COVID, we all know the disaster that the ventilation systems are exposing our kids and teachers to begin with. And to not have this fast tracked and have last minute cancellations with no real explanation is exasperating.
Just to follow up, we've met every deadline so far that the MSBA has given us for documentation. So they're getting everything they need. Nothing's being slowed down as far as the MSBA is concerned. They have everything they need. My concern is that the committee itself is not making these decisions, that the decisions themselves are being made by the district.
Don.
And that's the concern that I have, is that, you know, the committee's not being involved in any of this.
Rosemary.
Yeah, John, I just want to add quickly to what Kathy said. You also have stairways that are so narrow that could be hazards if there was a fire for the middle school, just to that. But back to John. John, you had mentioned that there were some issues with that they thought maybe more kids you need a bigger school, that the amounts that the state was giving just a few weeks ago
Yeah, so
were too small.
So there was a consultant hired somehow. I don't know who it was. Hold on, let me find it. The New England School Development Council was contracted, I guess, to come up with a evaluation themselves, kind of an independent evaluation of the numbers separate from MSBA, and their numbers came up exactly the same as MSBA's.
MSBA. Do you think that maybe the school's making that decision to provide more flexibility with growth? Because you're saying it's a little more than a.
Well, I mean, their concern was that they didn't agree with the numbers. They thought it needed to be bigger, so they brought in this person to look at it, and they looked at it as well, and they said, no, MSBA is right. So the thing is that we can do whatever we want. If we want to build a bigger school, we can. The problem is the MSBA is only going to build it based on a certain population. So if they're telling us 575 and we want to build it for 625, we can do that. That's fine. But the MSBA is not going to contribute their percentage to that additional size school. So it's going to cost us more to do that.
But they would contribute that percentage if we were building it from 5 to 8, correct?
If they were built, yeah, from 5 to 8, but then we're going to still have this in.
And then we'd have to handle a little bit more of our percentage is what you're talking
I mean,
about.
we have the same, you know, if we want to build a 5 to make it a 528, then it's a certain percentage. It's not any more building per pupil. I mean, you're still getting whatever they say it is. I mean, we got to put another grade in there. So, you know, to me, the numbers look low, but you know, I'm not an expert at that. So, you know, that's what it is. That's what it's going to be. I doubt it's going to go any different than that, just because the numbers would be too staggering financially to try to go bigger than what the MSBA recommends. So,
Okay, and answer your question, Rosemary? Does it
Yeah,
look like?
I think I missed your point here. If they're building from 5 to 8, the MSBA would recommend 675, correct?
hold on. 675 if we put 4 grades in there, correct?
If we put 4 grades in.
Right.
Okay. So
mean-
the additional cost you're concerned with is our percentage more to add an extra school, an extra
Oh, no,
amount.
I mean, a building that's bigger to handle 4 grades is going to cost more money than a building that built to handle 3 grades. So the fact of the matter remains, MSBA is only contributing whatever the percentage is, 48% or whatever.
48%.
Whitman
yeah.
is carrying the rest. So if I'm just going to throw out a number, if a 6 to 8 building costs Whitman $50,000, a 675 building is going to cost Whitman $60 million, maybe. You know, I mean, I don't know. I'm just throwing out numbers for comparison. But,
Okay.
you know, I think it should be up to Whitman to decide how big
What
of
they
a
wanna
building
do.
we want it to be. And
Oh, I
not
agree. I
the district
agree.
telling us just to match, just because Hanson has 5 through 8, they want Whitman to also has 5 through 8. I get it. It makes sense, you know, but let us decide. Don't decide for us.
So are we thinking about we might have more growth on the lower levels that we might need to bump them up? I mean, there's
No,
some information.
the from what I can see, they've, you know, in fact, it's going to go down dramatically.
do you mean?
Dramatically.
Our
All right, hold
pupil
on.
amounts are going to go down.
Our student amount, and according to these, all right, let me see if I can find it. Sorry, I wasn't really prepared to go into this much detail. This is K through 12. In 2020, it says Whitman has 2,121. They're predicting in 2030 that Whitman will have 1,713. So basically dropping almost 400 pupils K through 12.
With new growth, with all our new growth.
They take it all into consideration, and they did outline, it was commented in part of the letter that they did receive the packet from the Whitman regarding the additional information that they wanted to consider, and they did add, I think, 20 people per, 20 students per building, after considering what Whitman submitted them. And that was what, Ernie was doing apparently with, I'm not exactly sure who Ernie did it with, but, so that's what they're saying. So like I said,
Thank you, John.
I can't argue with two
consultants.
Two consultants had, MSBA and the independent consultant came up with just about the same numbers. So.
Great. Thank you, John.
Okay, thanks. And John Noon, you had something too?
Well, since 2007, the schools have been losing students every year consistently. So that it's close to, from 2007 to about 2020, there's been a loss of at least 900 to almost 1,000 students. So even with growth, it's not that kind of growth, I guess.
Right.
either singles or couples without kids moving into the multiple condo units that have been sprouting up.
Okay, good point, John. Thank you. All right, anybody else, any questions regarding the Whitman Middle School Building Committee? All right, the next item on old business is the Whitman-Hanson Regional School District Assessment. Again, we're waiting for the budget presentation from the district. Kathleen, anything you'd
Nothing
like to touch on?
on the
Nope.
Whitman Hanson assessment, nothing. There's no
Okay.
information coming from the superintendent's office.
And non-mandated busing, we got some feedback from former town administrator Frank Lynham, who unusually thought that that wasn't a topic for discussion within the finance committee. I thought that was unusual. But I mean, we're gonna leave unless the board is, in agreement that that's not something that we should be discussing. I think the board has had a long-term conversation about trying to find a way to turn non-mandated busing into revenue that could be allocated in a different manner. So again, it does go back to the Board of Selectmen and a policy decision on whether or not we want to continue to offer that service to the taxpayers of Whitman. But in my email response, I did say that, we are dependent on the Whitman-Hanson Regional School District for the information as far as ridership and that type of thing for us to make an informed decision on how to move forward with that line. And it is in line within Article 2. So, anybody else?
It's my
John,
understanding that it's sorry.
hold on, Rosemary, John.
No, go ahead, John. I apologize.
That's okay. I would say, yes, it's not our position to actually just, to make a decision on the policy of the busing. But we could make it very clear to whether it's the Board of Selectmen, the high school, Whitman-Hanson Regional District, that we will not support on town hall floor a fully funded busing program.
Yeah.
And
Well, it's
and
$401,000. So a recommendation is something that this committee should think about. If the town isn't ready to move forward with a policy decision on how to implement a pay-to-ride program, does the finance committee recommend zeroing out that line? I mean, we talked
Yeah.
about it long enough. The way to get it before the voters is to make a decision. And that is a line item that needs a recommendation and a vote from the finance committee. So something to think about. We got a long way to go here, but
I do think we need to get a look at that contract and have it sent over, because it is my understanding that in the contract that it is that amount that's negotiated is written in as dependent on the funding from the town. So it is something we could zero out, and they'd have to figure out what they're going to do. So it's not something that would change the overall contract. And that's just my understanding, but I'd like to get a closer look at that contract.
so a lot of years, the discussion has been either it's too late in the year to discuss, or making changes to that line is going to have an effect on the busing contract. This is the contract year. This is the time to have the conversation.
As I stated, I don't believe that ever was really the case. That's why I want to look at that contract again. It is my understanding from what I read quickly, glanced over, that that it was always contingent within the contract on funding from the towns. So it wouldn't affect that section or that amount of busing. So again, I believe that we need a look at that contract.
Okay, we'll see if we can request a copy of the busing contract from the district. Kathleen, you want to put that in your,
Yes,
as a liaison to the district? We'll
Yes.
start with you, and we'll move up the chain if you don't get the response that
okay.
you would like.
I will ask for more information on the busing contract.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, thank you very much. So moving on to the audit, again, it's a placeholder. Again, if we can't keep these things on our agenda as placeholders, we're going to lose focus on the need or the reason why we brought it up in the first place. So I think everybody is aware of, why this is on the agenda. And, it's my hope that we are looking at a warrant article on the upcoming town meeting that includes funding for that. Anybody else on the audit? Okay, CARES Act. Again, this became an issue for some reason. So I just want to make it clear that, Al, you requested a copy of the expenditures to date for the CARES Act. You weren't at last meeting. You did receive a copy of the document that the accountant office put together, right? This was emailed to the full committee.
Yeah.
Did this answer the questions that you had
Yeah.
with your request?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So simply, that's really why we wanted to table it to this meeting, was because, Al, you were the one that asked for the information. I just wanted to make sure
Yeah.
that the information you got answered the question that you had. That's all.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Anything under that? All right. So the warrants, obviously, we don't have the special town meeting warrant, as that has been postponed indefinitely. And the Board of Selectmen joint meeting agenda. So again, that's something that we need to discuss about the schedule. Does anybody have anything else they want to bring up under old business before I move on to the town administrator update? Okay, so
Yes.
as I mentioned, I had the pleasure of meeting with the new town administrator, Lincoln Hyman, today. And just very briefly, he just started yesterday, so, he was gracious enough to give me a little bit of time. But I think the main thing that we talked about, and we talked about the joint meeting agenda, we talked a little bit about the budget and how there should only be one budget, and that discussion that we had earlier. So he is in agreement with that. So the main thing that he wanted to stress, that he wants to be, a part of this process. And he's a real hands-on guy. Obviously, you all know that he comes with a significant financial background. So in order for us to have the opportunity to have his experience at our meeting, we have to either talk about moving the meetings that conflict with the selectmen meetings, or moving our meeting day completely to a different day. So I'll open up the discussion. John, maybe you can give us some sense on, from the Whitman Hanson Cable Access, which day of the week seems to be more
Monday
open?
Monday would be the most open, would be the best day to do
Okay.
it. There's only a couple meetings, and they're not even weekly. So if, I would, if we're gonna move half of our meetings, we might as well move them all to Mondays. Instead of going Monday this week, Tuesday next week, Monday this week, Tuesday next, that would get confusing in my opinion. So, Monday would achieve what we're looking for in order to get the new town administrator in here. From a WHCA perspective, they would love us because we're a regular every week meeting. So whenever, not only is there a Whitman Selectmen's meeting, but there's a Hanson Selectmen's meeting. Then there's also the building committee, there's like 6 different committees that meet on Tuesday nights. So Mondays would definitely be the best.
Okay. So then I guess the other issue may be sports. I know a lot of you have younger kids and sports schedules. Is that Monday at 7 o'clock going to conflict with any of that? Or any other thing that maybe anybody has with the work schedule?
No.
No,
Okay.
just if we could see if we could get Ken Lytle, it's so important to have your accountant really working with you. as a finance committee.
I agree.
I, before the last town administrator echoed what the accountant said all the time, but we have a new town administrator, and I think that's got to learn the history, and for at least a period of time in the interim, I think trying to see if Ken could come on those nights or whatever nights best for him.
And to John Noon's point about, what did the town administrator discuss with the recreation department? What better opportunity is to have him in front of us to ask the question instead of, me trying to relay the question back and then waiting a week for your answer. So I'm a total agreement that as often as we can get Ken to our meetings, I think it would be, and that's why really there's a place setter on our agenda for. It wasn't so that I could meet with them and bring the information. It was really for them to be at our meeting. I think the benefit of that is really can't be overstated. Go ahead, John Noon.
Well, traditionally, it's been Tuesday nights because that's when town hall is open. Now, granted, at the moment, it's, all Zoom. But were things to change, is there any problem with us meeting on Monday night and having access to the people who typically would not be in the building on a Monday night, like Ken or the town administrator, if we're meeting on a Monday?
So from the town administrator's position, he is amenable to coming to our meetings. Well, whether in person or whether virtually. But I guess, John, we could revisit the issue when we're doing in-person meetings again, if it becomes a problem. We could, we're not making a forever decision here. I think we're going to be in this Zoom platform for at least the foreseeable future. So I think the more access we have to the more people, I think that's better. So I guess, John, we could have that discussion when we go back to in-person meetings. Does that seem reasonable?
That would be fine, as long as the people that we actually want to see on Zoom are able to fit into a Monday schedule for us.
Yeah. Well, like I said, I think that's the point that Lincoln was making. Is if we go to a different night, he'll be available every meeting. So, and I would think from Zoom, we'd have no problem getting Ken on a Monday night either. But I can ask him specifically.
We can always put a laptop for anybody who wants to Zoom into the meeting.
Right.
If we meet in person.
Okay, so I'll ask that question to Ken. It's a good point, John, but here's the challenge for posting meetings. So not only do we, I got to make sure I post the meeting a week in advance. I actually have to request the meeting from Whitman Hanson Cable 2 weeks in advance. So if we're going to go to a Monday night, our next Monday night meeting will be not next week, but the following week.
Are you doing that for WHCA's or for, you can post to have the meeting move right now for next Tuesday to Monday at town hall. And I tell you right now, I just texted Eric and Ryan and they're going to jump for joy to have you guys to move it till Monday. So,
well, next week there's no selectmen's meeting. So it's already posted for Tuesday and we will have the town administrator.
All right.
And we'll have Ken. So, but all I'm suggesting is that if we do switch to Mondays, we just go for the following Monday.
Okay.
Instead of next. Is that all right with the board?
Yeah.
And Mondays is the night. And 7 o'clock is still.
Actually, yeah. And next Monday's a holiday anyway. It's
Yep,
President's Day.
that is
so.
correct. Yep. Okay, Monday, 7 p.m. And the date will be 16.
That's Tuesday.
22nd, I believe.
We got a huge thank you from Eric Dresser for moving to Monday nights. Like I can't show the men, but you'll never see it, but it's a good one.
All right. Well, I'm glad we made their day.
They did.
All right. So we're posted again, just to review, we are posted for next Tuesday is February 16th. On our agenda here, we have February 22nd 3rd as jointly with the Board of Selectmen. That is not going to happen. Not only the meeting is going to be on Monday, but it's not going to be a joint meeting with the Board of Selectmen. Because that was one of the other things that Lincoln said was, let's try to work on this budget. Let's get closer to where we need to be before we meet jointly with the Board of Selectmen. So, all right, is everybody comfortable with the meeting calendar? All right. Does anybody else have anything they would like to bring up under the good of the order?
Yes.
Ralph?
Yes, I met 2 weeks ago with the good folks from Bartholomew about the stabilization fund. Anyway, I got some positive news to report. Stabilization fund right now, 2,935,000 and change. And their overall return is 1.7, which is pretty good considering that it's all in bonds, CDs, and in more or less fixed instruments, because based on investment policy, we can't go in anything else. We have to keep it conservative in case we have to suddenly request a bunch of cash. You don't want to have to deal with market cycles. But I just wanted to pass that along, and I thought that was something positive, even though it is something minor, but it's good to know that we're not going broke in there.
Ralph, thank you very much for ending our meeting on a positive note. We can always count on you to be uplifting. So,
Sometimes.
all right. Anybody else? I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second,
So moved.
Okay, we have a motion and a second around the table. Kathleen,
Yes.
John Noon,
Yes.
John Galvin,
Yes.
Dave,
Yes.
Al,
Yes, sir.
Ralph,
yes.
Rosemary,
Yes.
and I vote yes as well. Thank you, Samantha.